Our speaker today is SWEEP President Rob Watson. Rob founded the SWEEP standard in 2016 and is the co-chair of the SWEEP Steering Committee. Rob is an international leader in market transformation and green buildings. You may already know him as the founding father of LEED. Under Rob's direction, LEED became the largest and fastest growing international green building standard. Now, as the founder of the SWEEP standard, we are seeing Rob lead market transformation standards towards sustainability in the solid waste industry. Assisting Rob today is Will Zurier, SWEEP's program associate. Will has been with SWEEP since 2018. He oversees the standard setting process and the development of SWEEP's certification tools and methods. All this while pursuing a Master of Science in Sustainability Management at Columbia University. We hope you enjoy today's webinar. Again, please post your questions in the Q&A box. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Jill. It's great to be back again. Happy New Year to everyone. It's a little late, but since it's the first time we're together, I figured wishing a wonderful, happy, healthy, and prosperous 2021 is a great way to kick off our webinar series. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about SWEEP. What is it? How did we develop it? Where we are in terms of its release and evolution, the SWEEP pilot program and how that's going to evolve, some tips on certification, and some of the places we expect the standard to be going in the near future. So basically, when I first got heavily into the industry 6 or 7 years ago, I realized after looking at a few waste characterization studies and a few solid waste plans that there was very little consistency in definitions, in analytical parameters, and it was very similar to the situation in the buildings industry back in the late 80s, early 90s when I started working for the Natural Resources Defense Council. And then when the Green Building Council was, when I was in the process of helping form that with several other folks from the industry, I kept asking people, what's a green building, right? I understood what energy efficiency was, water efficiency, all those things, and I couldn't get a straight answer. Similarly, with sustainable materials management, we have a whole raft of definitions out there and no real clear metrics for what a sustainable materials management program looks like. So we spent 4 years with very experienced, knowledgeable, and generous volunteers trying to figure out, at least as a first step, what is this thing that we call sustainable materials management, and how can we create a program to help define what it means and identify and reward leaders in the field. Just about a month ago, we had the final approval of the pilot standard for the SWEEP Plus standard. We are now in the pilot phase. We have about a half dozen local governments ranging from small rural towns to large urban areas signed up as a pilot. We are looking for additional local governments as well as business partners who might be interested in pursuing the pilot, and we'll go over that in a little bit. So basically, we are launching a whole suite of standards. And I think a suite of SWEEP standards is something that will be a tongue twister eventually. But unlike LEED, which is sort of the top quartile leadership standard that SWEEP Plus is, we are going to come out with standards designed for mid-market uptake as well as total leadership in the SWEEP 0 category. Each of these will have a lot of similarities, but for example, whereas Sweep Plus is an absolute standard. The same metrics apply everywhere. And if you don't hit the number, you don't qualify for that particular credit. In Sweep, we'll probably give you the opportunity to demonstrate a certain level of improvement, which means that if you improve 50% in your diversion rate, for example, and you go from 4% to 6% diversion, you'll get the same credit as somebody who goes from 10% to 15%, right? In each case, it's a 50% approval. But we have not started the Sweep development process yet, but that's sort of a little bit of a taste of things to come. And as the Sweep Zero standard implies, this will be more of a 95+% recovery metric, maybe 90%, depends on what the committees say. And that will be a binary, either your Sweep Zero or not. Whereas under Sweep Plus or Sweep, there will be gradations, certified, silver, gold, platinum. So, there's been a lot of work done intellectually and conceptually on sustainable materials management. It's evolved out of the hierarchy and turned from sort of a two-dimensional, somewhat linear idea into a more circular idea. Now, one of the challenges that we face in developing a standard focused on local governments and their solid waste industry partners is that we don't have a lot of influence or say over the manufacturing, distribution, and use portions of the material life cycle. That's sort of our dark side of the moon. And so, we've tried to figure out through procurement and other types of indirect measures how to get there. But one of the things that we will be looking closely at as the standard evolves is ways to possibly integrate a product design standard. I mean, that's LEED stayed away from products because it was really, really complicated. And, we're likely to do the same here, but we do want to work with product manufacturers to ensure that the programs, that their materials that are either left over from the industrial process or the just day-to-day operations of the front of the house, that they go into a circular process, and that can help the companies fulfill their corporate social responsibility goals. So far, we are the only comprehensive sustainability standard for the solid waste management industry. Many of you may be familiar with the TRUE standard, which evolved out of the Zero Waste Business Council. And that standard focuses on facilities and organizations. And so where Sweep takes over is once the material leaves the site, then we are helping structure programs so that people, companies and businesses seeking TRUE certification can have the assurance that the materials going out their door are in fact going where they said. One of the problems that we discovered with LEED is that there are plenty of waste management companies who are quite willing to lie on their letterhead about what exactly happens to your construction and demolition waste. And hopefully by having this extra layer of assurance that we will get much better program performance in terms of real environmental benefit, not just assertions on paper. And one of the things that we've seen in the evolution of standards is that first party, second party, third party standards, can require the same amount of work to achieve. If you're a private company and you say, okay, this is our sustainability standard, many of these have quite a bit of rigor to them. And if you look objectively at what they accomplish, they're quite good. However, the market basically sees that as a self-claim, a self-assertion, and does not give a lot of weight to it. However, a third-party standard, when somebody that is a disinterested party says, this is a green practice, then the market really notices. And so having a third-party standard out there is very important for the credibility of any environmental claims. Now, we recognize that not everybody will be able to or want to certify to one of the SWEEP standards. SWEEP Plus, because it aims at the top quartile, is designed to be rejected 3 out of 4 times. But one of the things that we hope that will happen is that the basic structure and content and requirements help guide people toward a more sustainable program design. And then, in the certification process, during the pilot at least, we will be working very closely with local governments and their industry partners to help them achieve the certification. Our goal is to have you certify in a credible fashion, of course. So as a local government, you would get third-party recognition as a leader in the field. You'd be able to demonstrate your sustainability commitment to constituents, also ensuring that any performance that are in your contracts or that you've established as program goals are fulfilled. As a program that has gone through an ANSI accredited standard setting body, this standard has the ability to be used as an underwriting standard for green bonds or other types of financial instruments. We also anticipate that there will be a significant reduction in costs by those who implement these requirements. All of these are cost effective, we expect, and because of the emphasis on safety and documentation and public as well as worker involvement, we believe there will also be a significant reduction in liability. Many of these benefits accrue similarly to a waste industry service provider. You can basically direct incentive programs for people who achieve SWEEP within their business unit. We have already seen some waste service providers offering SWEEP certification as an enhancement to their bid packages. So we believe that companies that are certified to SWEEP will have an advantage in the RFP process. And then if you're a large business, your customers want to see your corporate social responsibility goals upheld. Your commitment to SWEEP is one of those demonstrations. And you also will have additional assurance that any zero waste or waste reduction goals that you set up as part of your corporate sustainability goals are being more fully implemented. SWEEP is a membership organization. One of the benefits of membership in particular is your ability to participate on committees and help establish the future framework of sustainable materials management. You also get the benefit of working with other leaders and learning from them and sharing your successes with them. And as we develop more products and services, there will be discounts on those products and services for SWEEP members. We have kept the membership dues low because we want people to participate. All of the monies received by SWEEP go to improving the program and making available tools and materials that will reduce the cost of certification once a company or local government seeks certification. So we have a few dozen members, both from the industry and local government, working on SWEEP committees, being members of SWEEP, being pilot programs. We want to grow this number significantly. We believe that no one of us is as smart as all of us. And we take every participant seriously as an important contributor to our programs. So SWEEP itself is a triple bottom line sustainable materials management standard. I've mentioned that it's for local governments and the materials management industry. as a recognition and definition of leadership and best practices. Similar to LEAD, it is a point-based system. You get different numbers of points based on the difficulty or the importance or the impact of the various credits. We'll go into that a little bit more detail in subsequent slides. One of the most important elements of SWEEP is to define a consistent set of metrics and performance goals across the industry. The goal is to integrate policy and practice over time. So although we are starting with a heavy emphasis on policy because it's a new standard, we will increasingly be rewarding performance in addition to having the correct policy framework. Based on the experience with LEAD, we can provide a standardized basis for incentive programs. We are able to move away from the hodgepodge of inconsistent metrics. I sort of call it the Lake Woebegone effect, where all materials management programs are above average. And although while we are trying to seek consistent performance, we recognize that the conditions in a small rural town are different from those in a large urban environment. And so, we have initially, sought to try and tune the requirements and the approaches, that are appropriate for areas that are more spread out and less dense versus those that are more compact and denser. So we expect those types of customizations to increase over time, and that's why we value the participation of a broad range of members, so that we can ensure that the access to sustainable materials management in your business and social context can be achieved. And at the end of the day, we want to transform this absolutely vital industry more towards sustainability. The science is telling us that, in a decade or two, we're going to be possibly over the lip of the manageable versus unmanageable climate change. Waste management writ large, including upstream material input considerations, represents up to 10% of the global climate footprint of humanity. And so, it's going to be very important that the management of greenhouse gases and other pollution elements of the industry are managed and reduced over time. So, we expect that standardizing material characterization, as one of the ways to affect the so-called dark side of the moon, will, that SWEEP is going to seek to try and balance what consumers see, what the waste industry has to deal with, and what manufacturers need, right? Because what a consumer thinks about when they are trying to make either a purchase or discard decision is different from what the needs of the waste management industry are, which is different from manufacturers. So hopefully we'll be able to find that sweet spot to create a framework that addresses the sustainable materials management concepts of each of these three players. I'm not saying we're there yet, but it's one of the things that we want to go to so that we can have a greater impact through the entire material cycle. So SWEEP itself has 5 categories. As I mentioned, the sort of the foundation of the pyramid, if you will, is the Sustainable Materials Management Policy category. And that's basically giving credit for having an intention or a policy to do something, and then whether or not those policies are implemented, those points come in the subsequent categories. So looking at waste generation and prevention and data and analytics is what we look at for the waste generation and prevention category. Then we get more into the mechanics and the supply chain of the solid waste process, where we start with collection and all the elements that make that sustainable. And then looking at the recovery aspect of it, which we believe is the core of sustainable materials management. But we also want to reward improved and best practices in the disposal area of the industry. Right now, it's the majority of the industry, but in a sustainable materials management framework, it will be a significantly smaller piece, which is why it does not get as much credit as some of the other categories. We are trying to emphasize reducing the footprint of materials that are ultimately discarded, but we do reward good management practices in facilities where materials are discarded. And then we also have an innovation sort of bonus point credit category, either exemplary performance, things that we haven't thought of, and this is a below the denominator thing and can be used to improve scores. So we recognize that not all industry players are vertically integrated. So we have the ability of a company that only does hauling to get sweep certified. There might be a couple of policy elements, might be a couple of data, waste characterization, data gathering elements, and then the entire collection process. Similarly, if you're a MRF, many of the elements in the recovery category would apply to you, and again, some corporate policy and some data collection and operation. So we've tried to create a standard that is applicable to a broad range of players within the industry. It's possible that we've missed some, and so hopefully, if you're a player in the market that feels like the standard does not do a good job for you, that we can get your input and figure out how we can make the standard better. So we've already mentioned the points. Basically, it's very similar to the LEED system. And then Sweep Zero, you'll either be Sweep Zero certified or you won't. We've gone through an extensive balloting and review process, and even before we got to the public release, we spent almost 3 years as a professional committee gathering elements of the standard, structuring it, going over language, and then we threw it into the public. We had public meetings in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. These were vetted by anybody in the industry who wanted to participate in those meetings could. And then when we had the standard far enough along that we thought it was worth balloting, we put it out for ballot. And then you could either approve with comments, or disapprove with comments, or abstain. But our leadership standard development, consensus development process requires us to come to agreement with any party who submits a negative ballot. So in the 3 ballot processes that we had negative comments, which in each case we resolved, and then we put the resolution forward. And then finally, we had one set of comments that was unresolved that came from SWANA, which had put out the standard to its many volunteer committees for review. So we had a public meeting where members of the National Consensus Committee went back and forth, and we resolved the comment to SWANA's satisfaction. And I think this process made the standard better, and it's one of the reasons we think that we are coming out with a fairly robust product. And so now we are formally in the pilot process. We're working with our pilot participants now, still seeking additional pilot participants, but now we're moving into implementation. I'll talk about some of the elements of that subsequently. So the standard itself is made up of prerequisites and credits. So you have to get all the prerequisites, obviously. And then your score depends on the number of credits across the 5 categories that you achieve. And their credit is basically a defined set of actions to meet the goals of SWEEP within the 5 categories. And then we also have things called key performance indicators that look at environmental performance, economic performance, efficiency, as well as social and public participation elements. Each credit has an intent, which says, why are we doing this? What is the problem being solved? And then the actual requirement itself, which is the what. And then, because again, we're a new standard and people are still not quite familiar with how we're defining things right out of the box, something that's not part of the standard, but is sort of part of the color and gives an idea of what is being required. We have a potential strategies session. So you have a sense, looking at the standard, what you're being asked to do and how we are defining the basic actions needed to do that. I mean, again, the potential strategies are not very comprehensive. We are developing a comprehensive certification manual that will go into depth to the issues, the calculations, the data sources, case studies, et cetera. And we expect that a draft of that will be available quite soon. As I mentioned, there are key performance indicators within each of the performance categories, and these have to do, again, fairly self-explanatory with the efficiency and effectiveness of measures within that. Things that are focused on environmental performance, things that are focused on economic performance, and then elements that have public participation, working conditions, and social impact implications. So looking at sustainable materials management policies, or SMMP, we're looking at regulatory and policy measures aimed at solid waste generation, improving the performance of solid waste collection, processing, and recovery. So it's kind of a policy overview of everything in the standard. There is a prerequisite to have a comprehensive sustainable materials management policy. This could be considered a zero waste policy. This could be considered a sustainable materials management policy, or even a circular economy policy, but one that touches on waste. Then we have a performance path where the credits are where the credit it's sort of an integrated credit where we look to do a comprehensive analysis on key environmental metrics, either using the WARM model from EPA to look at the top 10 most impactful materials, and then developing policies on how to reduce the impact of those, or a more comprehensive life cycle analysis using MEBCalc or another life cycle approach. So if you use the simple WARM model, that would be sort of the 10 credit category, or if you use the more comprehensive life cycle assessment, that's where you get the more credit for that. So we give credit for a policy that proposes to improve processing infrastructure and market development. If your town wants to, or company wants to develop diversion and recycling goals, we give credit for a policy in that. Similarly, if you have a policy to conduct regular waste characterization and waste generation studies, that is creditable, as is taking your basic policy, your basic sustainable materials management policy, and bumping it up with a few extra elements. And then if you have an emissions or greenhouse gas policy, that gets rewarded. A policy to reduce for source reduction within your town or business, and also a policy to engage in market-based waste management measures, pay as you throw, et cetera, is also creditable for local governments, but it's not creditable for an industry participant, as is the materials processing infrastructure and market development. That is considered outside of the purview of an industry, but so the points are weighted a little different. And then we also have a public participation or public information element to the SMMP credit to round out the aspects of this performance category. In waste generation prevention, this looks at data collection and analysis and ensures the effectiveness and efficiency of the programs through data analysis, et cetera. We do require that some sort of calculation and or measurement of waste generation, recovery, and disposal be conducted. Then we give credit for a range of source reduction programs. We give credit for rescue and reuse programs. And then also developing measurement, calculating, and source reduction and the impacts of rescue and reuse programs. Credit given for litter prevention and reduction, and also a procurement. This is how we're trying to reach up a little bit in the supply chain for sustainable materials procurement, and for both capital and non-capital items. And then also we are trying to get a better handle on the economics of solid waste programs. So we give credit for an assessment and reporting of solid waste management program economics. And then a couple of elements looking at engaging people in the solid waste management process, and also having the programs and infrastructure for household hazardous waste. Then in collection, obviously we're looking at how to make the process of gathering, consolidating, and transporting solid waste more efficient and sustainable. We look at how to provide a range of options from drop-off sites to curbside, looking at the energy efficiency of the collection fleet, and also the energy efficiency or alternative fueled components of the infrastructure, such as transfer stations, et cetera. And then again, looking specifically at the costs associated with solid waste collection. So you might notice that there is some overlap, because we noticed from the previous credit that we give credit for an economic assessment of solid waste management. Well, if you're doing that, you'll probably have already done your cost assessment for solid waste collection. So we're consciously double counting this, because again, we think that there's not a lot of transparency in solid waste management costs, and that we think that that good policy is made by ensuring that everybody understands what the different elements of costs are in a program. These are we're looking for general numbers, so nothing that would be a proprietary would be asked for. And then each of the following credits have aspects around a commitment to safe working conditions and ensuring that any OSHA-related issues are taken care of quickly. So in post-collection recovery, as you might imagine, we're looking at what happens once the material is collected. We do have a prerequisite for a minimum diversion rate or a maximum waste generation rate. So if you don't have a lot of diversion, but you can show that your population is not disposing on a per capita basis of too much waste, then that fulfills the prerequisite. We're looking at optimizing material recovery and per capita disposal quantities. We address contamination in outputs from material recovery facilities, and also producing high quality materials with minimum. One addresses inbound contamination, one addresses outbound contamination. We give credit for anaerobic digestion infrastructure, and also creating recovery and reprocessing technology within, near the core of the waste shed. Low emission and energy efficient operations of your MRF and other recovery facilities, your composting facility, for example. We look at organics processing facilities and ensuring that those are managed and operated properly. We give credit for low emission alternative fuel equipment at MRFs, at composting facilities, et cetera. And then again, we've got the cost transparency, good neighbor, and safety, as well as OSHA aspects. And then finally, in disposal, as I mentioned, you don't get credit for throwing anything away, but if you're managing your facilities properly, using alternative field on-site mobile equipment, managing your stormwater properly, managing your landfill emissions properly, effectively recovering methane. And then we have, again, the material cost transparency, the good neighbor, and safety elements in this. And then finally, an innovation category, stuff we didn't think of, stuff that's expensive and new. This is kind of a proving ground, and you get extra credit for it. So the pilot is designed to develop ground truth for SWEEP. We've got a lot of smart, experienced people working on this, but as General MacArthur famously said, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. So we're going to take our ivory tower ideas, throw it out on a limited basis to see how well these elements are actually implementable. And on that ground truth basis, we will resolve and refine the various criteria definitions, and then we will put out the new standard for review and balloting, and then eventual public release. So the pilot's going to be 15 to 18 months. We'll go through a ballot incorporation process, and then the public standard, is probably in the 2022 timeframe, will be for the market writ large. We're taking this time to develop practical certification tools and processes, including calculation methodologies and actual calculators, so you don't have to create your own spreadsheets. And I mentioned the certification manual. And we expect that this will be a period where people will be learning about the standard, maybe stealth implementing it in their own facilities to see, where you are ending up. And one of the very important elements, not only of the development of the SWEEP standard itself, but we think implementation during the pilot phase and beyond, is interface with local universities and colleges. For example, when Will first joined us, he was at Wake Forest University, and we've had several interns from Wake Forest, from Columbia, from Cornell, UCLA, Santa Monica College, Pepperdine, Colgate. So we are open and very interested in working with local universities, community colleges, any educational institution and this can have a couple-fold impacts. One, it helps identify people who are interested in the industry so that they can be evaluated and vetted by local governments or waste industry businesses. It's also a way of giving experience to the next generation, giving them agency, and also having them contribute to reduced costs of certification, because they're free labor to be exploited ruthlessly. Our pilot scope, we're sort of in the technical demonstration portion of it, and then we will move to the full pilot probably in the next 4 to 6 months. We're looking for 15 or more local governments. We're looking for geographical distribution. We're also looking for size distribution. And so we can either call it small, medium, large, or we can use the retract definitions of urban, suburban, and rural. And the reason we're interested in the retract definitions is that Retract Connect, which is the host of the municipal measurement program, which is supported by the Recycling Partnership and US EPA, is developing our online certification tool, which we are very excited about. It will provide a centralized place to very easily and consistently put in the data and check off the materials and tell you exactly what you need to upload to demonstrate that you've achieved the sweep requirements. And eventually there will be closer and closer integration with the municipal measurement program and sweep. And so both Retract and we are very excited about the potential for creating this national online sustainable materials management platform. And obviously, our industry partners are super important. So we're hoping that each of the local government jurisdictions that's in the project, in the pilot program, has at least one industry counterpart. This could be anything from a small local hauler, operator of a composting facility, all the way up to a large national vertically integrated waste company. Currently, we have 5 pilot participants, another 5 or 6 that we're in advanced conversations with. But as you can see, we do have them ranging from large local governments to small local governments. And we have really I'm very happy about the geographical distribution. We're very interested to see how waste management districts play with the system. There are going to be some interesting issues around consolidation and who gets credit for what. But we also see this as an opportunity to reduce costs. Like, for example, we're not expecting every small jurisdiction to do a waste characterization study. So it may be a group of local governments and with support of local haulers can do a waste characterization study at a regional landfill, and then every jurisdiction that is served by that regional facility can benefit from that work. So we're looking at ways to make sure that the cost and access to this program is very accessible to a range of governments. And remember that Sweep Plus right now, because it's designed for the top quartile, will be rejected 3 out of 4 times. However, Sweep will address the mid 50% of the market and will have many of the same elements. And we're looking at the ability to reduce costs for implementation, which is why we're developing these tools and materials. So I mentioned the certification manual. It'll include the text of the standard, background materials, laying out all the calculations, linkage with both online and offline forms and calculators, basically a step-by-step guide on how to do things, case studies so that you can emulate. And the other thing that Sweep will be developing over time are like model ordinances and model sort of templates or cookbooks, if you will, for how to create the program's policies and activities that Sweep approves. So again, I mentioned the Sweep certification forms. Will has been working really, really hard on those, done a fantastic job. LEAD was out for almost 10 years before we had an online certification tool. So we're coming out of this right out of the box because we recognize the power and importance of having this tool. So we will we're working with Retract, and I'd say in 3 to 4 months we should have something that will be usable. For the pilot programs in the interim, we've developed a series of offline tools, and we'll be working closely with them. So our responsibilities during the pilot is to basically administer the program, make sure that the certification materials are useful. We'll stay in touch with participants on a regular basis, make sure that the program is funded, and get ready for the launch. And then the pilot participants, again, if we call, please talk to us. And then, obviously, the certification fee needs to be paid, and we have a registration fee, and then what you get from that is a benchmarking exercise where we create a gap analysis and show sort of where you are versus where you want to go based on the certification level. And then you can use that gap analysis to assess the amount of in-house time it will take. Because the question we always get is, how much effort is this going to take? And that's not knowable because A, we don't know where you are, and B, we don't know where you want to go. But this gap analysis process will help you assess where you want to go and then where you are. And then we can bridge that gap and give you a much better sense of what it's going to take to actually certify. So, we will provide default calculators based on sort of average information nationally or for your state where applicable, but obviously the strong preference is for measured and reported data, and that's where we're going to provide a heavy emphasis. And then, we will want a good participation and collaboration between the local government and the industry. We want to create a virtuous circle between these these elements and get the word out about the SWEEP program. So certification is based on the size of the organization. And I can tell you categorically that it's significantly less expensive to certify your entire sustainable material management program than it is to certify a single LEED building. And I don't say that with any disparagement towards LEED. It's a fantastically valuable and important program, but the cost of this certification is relatively low. And many local governments have certified their buildings to LEED. We believe that it should not be too difficult to convey the importance of a sustainable materials management program and work with your budget elements to seek approval for that. So we would love to get you involved. Become a member, join our committee, join our pilot. We have a brand new website, which again, Will has done a lot of work on. So please check it out. It's sweepstandard.org. Would love to see you there. Would love to see you on a committee meeting. We've got lots of opportunities coming up. And so before we go to Q&A, and I apologize for going over just a little bit, we have another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks. And we're going to look at waste characterization studies in conjunction with Judy Gregory, who is an industry veteran. And I'm very honored to be on the same program as she, who's done so much for the industry and is so knowledgeable in this area. And we're going to talk about, how this, how waste characterization studies contribute to good program, conducting a good program, and what the importance and impact it is in SWEEP. So with that, absolutely look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, you can certainly write to me, or you can write to Will Zurier. It's WILL.ZURIER@sweepstandard.org. Or you can write to info@sweepstandard.org as well, and we'll get back to you. So really appreciate your time and would love to get into Q&A. Will, do we have any questions? Okay, so it looks like this question here is, this process seems to be more organizational or program-based than project-based like LEED. How do you determine the bounds of what is to be certified? Would it be the organization, the program, et cetera? That's an excellent question. Boundary issues are one of the most complicated things to deal with. So I would say that, probably the most important denominator, if you will, or boundary is that of the local government. And so within the boundaries of that jurisdiction, any waste that's generated, whether it's non-residential or residential waste, would sort of be in the denominator. There's some gray areas regarding, industrial waste that might go to a normal MSW landfill and not require any special treatment. And these are some of the, the nuances in the denominator and the boundary that we're going to be figuring out. So if you're a business unit in a waste hauling company and you manage several jurisdictions, you can seek to get the operations of your business unit certified, in which case you can go to each of the jurisdictions that you serve and say, we are sweep certified, and therefore, all of our activities around our MRF, our landfill, our fleet accrue to you. And we have credits that are called reciprocal and non-reciprocal, which basically means if they're reciprocal, it doesn't matter who does it. It could be the local government, it could be the industry, it could be both. But if one gets it, then the other, that credit does not have to be redocumented. Basically, all you have to say, I'm Anytown, USA, and my hauler is sweep certified. So, and they cover this. So I'm just gonna check off that, we're using a sweep certified hauler, and all that documentation is basically adopted by reference. And so you don't have to go through the whole compilation thing. So I hope that answers that question. A tribal government. Yeah, I don't see why not. We have been looking at either, so the question is a tribal government a consideration for sweep program? And I would give that a rousing yes. And it would either be looked at as a local government under the local government standard, or it might be looked at as a campus. But I would be thrilled if we could work with a tribal government to implement sweep. That would make me so happy. So the next question is, if your local government doesn't operate a MRF or landfill, this seems to reduce the total possible points possible and therefore maximum credential that can be achieved. Is that accurate? It's an excellent question, but no, that's not accurate. So for example, if you send your material to a regional landfill, it is the activities of that regional landfill that will be credited for or against your certification. Like I said, we're hoping to, get a virtuous cycle where we've got, industry and local governments working together. It may take a little while for that to happen, but a lot of LEED buildings, for example, helped solve wars between tenants and landlords. So I think that, we can create a cooperative environment for waste industry service providers and local governments. And so, it will be, certification will require either getting data from the local waste hauler or using some of our estimation calculators. The leverage that you have as a local government is that, the next time the franchise or contracts comes up, you can, make it clear that helping with sweep will be a very important criteria for you, either looking backwards or looking forwards. So those are all the questions I have. It looks like we have had a very active chat. So I don't have access to those, but if Jill or Will have access to questions in that and they want to share that with me, terrific. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Jill to close out the session.
I'll just chime in quickly that we were getting questions in terms of the education certification packages that we'll be coming out with, when they'll be coming out, and then overall getting consultants involved in their own right.
Okay, so we will have a training and education program. It's actually one of the things that we're working on with greeneducation.us. We will have a fairly comprehensive free seminar package, but we will also, as we get into the nitty gritty of each of the performance categories and the nitty gritty of certification and the aspects of the individual credits, we will have an accreditation package for that, or access to these much more in-depth and technical webinars as part of a paid implementation package. So my guess is that, we'll probably see something like that in 6 to 9 months. And then we absolutely welcome consultants, because consultants often have, they have a huge amount of experience across a broad number of types of jurisdictions. And so, we absolutely welcome consulting firms to be members, join our committees, and help us make the standard better. We will be looking for people to help us write the certification manual, develop our tools, etc. So we will absolutely want to work with folks that are familiar with us when we're looking to let out those contracts. And technology companies, we have several technology companies that are working on blockchain, they're working on robotics, other types of aspects of the industry, low emission vehicles. There are lots of technological, sale and promotion potentials through the SWEEP standard. So we absolutely would love to have companies on the technology or even large waste generator sides help us generate create standards that will ensure that the materials they generate have a place to go and create local sustainable economy around waste.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rob and Will. I think from participating in the chat and seeing the registration for today's webinar, there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, and it's an idea whose time has come. So we're really looking forward to continuing to support the SWEEP standard in its rollout. There is a link in the chat for the next webinar that's coming up on February 18th. And just a reminder for anyone who may be new joining us today, there was a series of webinars that was offered in 2020 that are available on both the SWEEP and the Green Education website. So be sure to check those out to hear the conversations that happened last year. And I know SWEEP, Will's been posting the link to the website and his email address for follow-up so that we can continue the conversation until the next webinar.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.